Aya yoxatini, the Katuhan, Achtuya K, Wuchin Hasati, Kuhaantí, away we cook, Yachwatak, Yayaki, Asa Kashakayat, Kunahoy has to dat you tuchwatunk, Kakwanish, Shakshani, Dusty Ya, a dataway ye has chiwene, Kashain Haswusti, Hasusti, Datho, and Nakaswu art. John Koa, Hasaku, has to Tawu Saku, Yayagi, Hayejene, Hawakshi Yegachtusne, Konahoyak, Ya Lingít ʼatángi, Sati at Owe, Kashtasa Ayanach Atutletsin, Adrech tu Yake Yank Hayati, Ya Kuhaantí, Yaskalni, Adat Yejagachtune, Wuchin Johan. Hadna Shoni, you do a sak which a good shukatru yukatangi. Hadna Shoni, Gwash Kleka Asai, Kleshtas Kleka Yukatang Koa, we Ka Yukatangi, Hadna Shoni Ai, Mohawk, Seneca, Oneida, Tuscarora, Gashuk Ayakuti, Klekatas to Sako Hosaka, Hechasaka. Ja, hast du ihn juch getan, Ade Kai, hast auch tu. Ja, hast du juch Jag gingi, ha juch yach, Chedzi, Ade away, Jakut yede, Yegach tusane, Ja, Klech juch Klech verb kutzati, Stekat yede yekwati. Hast du juch Ka hast du ihn juch getan, we Jakut Kainacha, Quechua, you do a sago at where you tung. Ecuador koa, Jagut yukatangi kutzati, Quechua, grammar, Spanish, sanko koa, the cut at kayeti, Shakudzi, Ka Kainachatsu, Mayan, yukatangi dati juane, Guatemala, akayeti. Ye ewe wuchin yuchatit atkin, a data we ka yuchatangi. Aku eka linguistics has to twasa go a dat yuchiwatani. Chatra, like, chashachtosh. Just data tinach sayati we kuu. Kush has to yuchatangi, has to jig in katlakit. Ye ewe achtuasa go a dat yuchatatani. Wukeka New York City, Buffalo. Ya achtu ya keko a ya ke khatyati. Khagwash yisatin with Zoom kach ya de yakhyakhsene. Kadu ukhuat. Gwash ya de yakh ya watlaqi khukh dak hustan. Yata keuchatuku at kekwash tuk. Yata koa nachtu yeti. Dech a gush yende siu dak guchsatan. Katqad siu again? Ha ani kach siu dak us tunch. Gwashiata kudach aya kuwat Tlein out the gun. Zoom kashayachoti Johan, kashayachoti. Adusa dujitaya kakkwashahid. x'áandéin. X'áandéin kashóokʼ. Gwashiegach sa. Angry email. Ye awa kunchish a kheti sa achi. Gwashi tuasagu yuchiatani. Lingít chinach. Kekwakke. Okay, so we'll switch over. So some of you, and maybe just we'll see how this goes organically, should consider scripting out some short things you could say at the beginning of classes. It doesn't have to be a response to me. It could be just, let's just practice being in the language, saying some things. So even if you just had 1 or 2 sentences, that's a really good place to start. And just so you know, no one's going to correct you. No one's going to, well, if someone sends you some random email from somewhere, just ignore it. My recommendation is no one's going to correct anyone. Instead, our focus is on communication. Always communication over perfection. It doesn't have to be correct. You can get there eventually, but I don't think you can get to correct speaking unless you mess up a whole bunch of times, right? I used to play a lot of music when I was young, and unfortunately for my parents, there was an elder in Skagway who parted ways with this gigantic Fender Bassman amplifier, like 4 12-inch speakers. And my brother got a hold of it, and then he gave it to me. And then I learned how to play guitar on that thing, which was loud, incredibly loud. And I think my stepmom used to complain, he sounds terrible. And my dad used to say, yeah, but he won't always. So, you know, rock out, go for it. Bring some things to say. Just think of stuff. You know, what kinds of things. I don't really plan on things to talk about when we come here. Like we start the class and I just tell you what's on my mind, which is, that's what we're trying to get to, right? So I could think of it and I could say it. What kinds of things was I talking about?
We were talking about our work, and we were talking about various people's languages and their way of life and culture. And you said a lot. So like the people residing in the area.
Yeah.
I felt like I actually got like a lot more of that than I usually do. I would say rather than like a third of that, I got like half of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, like which we haven't, I don't know if I've talked about this directly, but it's pretty common when you're learning a language, at least when you're learning Lingít, you'll be listening to someone and you'll know what they're saying. But then someone says, "What'd they say?" You're like, "I don't know," but you kind of know. But that act of sort of moving it into English does take. But we do this like every time we get together, right? But yeah. Anything else you guys were catching?
Sounds like you were talking about the people that you were talking with on your trip. And like you didn't want to talk about linguistics, you wanted to talk about how people can use the language.
Yeah. Because we're there hanging out, talking about like some really, and I do think it's very helpful. It's very fun, but I get kashóokʼ, I get bored. I was like, what's going to help the people? What is going to help the people right now? Which I do think a lot of stuff does help people. But sometimes I feel like we're out here like really measuring things and like doing these little experiments when everybody is like dying, you know? I'm like, and sometimes we're like, ooh, like what's the average size of a human's big toe? It's like they're all dying. Like, why are we doing, right? And so, but I understand. Like it's a whole field that is fascinating to me.
I heard kunach.
Kudach, yeah.
No, kunach.
Kunach. Yeah, like really?
Yeah, he said it was really good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I heard that one.
Really good. Really good. What are some of the languages I was talking about? Anybody know?
Mayan.
Mayan?
Quechua.
Mohawk, Oneida.
Oneida? Right. So
Also the Mayan.
yes, Mayan. Yep. So the people whose land I was in was a lot of Haudenosaunee. After leaving Manhattan, I went west into Haudenosaunee territory, which is a family of languages. So Mohawk, Oneida, Tuscarora. There's quite a Seneca. I named quite a few. I don't know all of them. They're also related to Cherokee. But I was talking with those folks quite a bit about how they teach their language and how they do a lot of similar stuff that we do because they have a lot of moving parts to their language. And about 20 years ago, I think, they transition from trying to teach a whole bunch of phrases to just teaching people how the language works. They have these adult immersion programs, which are pretty dope, which I'm going to try and get people to buy into here. But we'll probably have to build a facility where people can like basically live. But you live in the language, right? And then you develop this core of really high fluency second language speakers, and you use that because then if we had that, those of you who are learning here could go there for retreats, right? It's like, go to the language house, go do a 2 week trip at the language house and crank up my pronunciation and my fluency and my comprehension. So,
ʼatángi hit.
yeah, ʼatángi, okay.
Do you do that in Hawaii as well?
Not so much. I think Hawaii is mostly, they do have like a fast track program where you learn twice as fast as everyone else. But I don't think they have a place where, as an adult, you can go and live in the language. It's mostly focused on kids. And so those are two really different approaches. Because one, it's like, well, if we create these centers, which is preschools and schools that are entirely using the language, then we have to reach high fluency and able to be able to teach through the language. And then there you have adult immersion programs, and you also have school programs that are developing. And you have the Freedom School, which is in New York side of that country for Mohawk country. And they've been teaching through the language as well. So they're two different approaches, but they also don't have, it's not a one or the other type of choice. So we could develop both. Yeah.
What if there's like an entire school that was just Tlingit?
That's what we've been pushing for. Um, so we have a language nest right now, which is entirely in Tlingit. So the idea would be to build a kindergarten, then the next year build a first grade, but it's going to have to take off. Like, it's like a plane that just keeps taxiing and taxiing, and it's getting close to taking off. So
The HRD was talking to me like 2.5 years ago now. Well, no, actually, just 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago. Sorry, I forgot the date. But he was saying that that place where the shoehorn tossing was and stuff like that was that they were thinking about converting that to like a Tlingit school or something like that.
So there are talks about growing the TCLL program and then developing potentially a dual language school and or a medium school within it. So basically, you have kind of these models. You have a cultural immersion program, which would be like we do a lot of Tlingit stuff. We sing songs, tell stories, eat our foods, but English is still the medium, right? So we still teach all content through English, but we also teach the Tlingit language as a subject. So then you could develop an immersion program, which would be, we don't think people can fully function in the language, so we want to get them functioning in the language. And then within that, you can have a dual language program, which says, and you have a percentage. It could be, it's 20-80. 20% of your time is in Tlingit, 80% in English, 50-50, 80-20. So you can start as like a 20-80. Let's say school started at 8:30, you go till like 10 o'clock and be entirely in Tlingit, trying to teach content through Tlingit. So that's where I think the separation is in between like creating speakers and not. Is if you're teaching through the language, then it becomes a thing of communication. Because if you're always teaching about the language, people will know about it, but they generally will have a really hard time talking. And then there's a language medium school, which would be all content, including English, is taught through. So the goal is to have all of those things. And to have an adult immersion program. And yes, and we've been talking, there used to be space here at UAS, because we used to have, I came to a language camp here in the summer of 2000. And it was a blast. We stayed on campus. We were here for 2 weeks, I think, or 10 days or something. And we had these immersion settings. Might have gotten yelled at by a language teacher, but for asking questions. And so, again, we talked off the record before class started about high pressure and low pressure environments, right? But there has been talks as well about basically building a culture camp. Because some of you may have seen the Presbyterian Church gave a public apology, committed to donating $1 million to culture and language revitalization in this area, which is amazing, especially considering all the harm that they have done. And so I've been saying for a long time when people ask me to give talks, say, well, where are these churches and where's their money? Because I remember the Pope gave this wonderful apology a year or two ago. And I thought, that's great. That's great, Pope. And like, what's the thing? You know, it'd be like if I burn your house down and it took me 30 years and I came up to you, I was like, hey, I'm really sorry I burned your house down. But I never went to jail or nothing ever happened. Like, I think that's a start, but shouldn't I like buy you a house or build you a room? Paint the walls, something? Okay, sorry.
I mean, I think in this case, it's like if I burned your house down and then I made several $billion off of it afterwards.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then because the metaphor I would use too is I was like, someone burned all our houses down, built these really nice schools, and then they don't let us in the door, right? And so as we look at continual change, though, I do want to recognize when people do. So the Presbyterian Church was here, and they did make that commitment. But it's complicated because when we have usually language immersion gatherings, like if you think of just the Juneau area, where could we have them? So we've had them out the road at the Methodist camp, and they've been very accommodating, and it's a neat space. But there's a big cross on the wall, and that's not for everybody, and that sometimes is a reminder of the thing that came for you. You know, it's like it's such an interesting dynamic. Anyways, coming back though, I'm excited about the Kuhaantí book. I was talking about that. I'm excited about these stories coming out and that we have them full on in Tlingit. And any other thoughts or anything before we move into translation?
I mean, I'm not an expert in the history of the Lingít, but I did take a Western Studies class, and it's to get Lingít to the position it's in now took like decades and decades and decades of participation of all the churches, the government, and everything, and lots of money and stuff to hurt people and things like that. So to revitalize Tlinka, I think that it's likely going to take the participation of lots of institutions and the lots of work of uplifting people. You know,
Yes, because we've also talked about language centers and spaces where we can go to just speak it. So that like let's say you had 2 hours. Like I got 2 hours of my day. Oh, I'll go to the language house, talk to people. Right? That would be such a game changer for us to say, as soon as I walk in that door, I'm dropping the English.
So this is related to the Kuhaantí thing. Is it good if I just do my best on it and just write as much as I can do?
Yes, so coming to Kuhaantí, right? This story that we're translating, just to sort of talk about what we're doing. This is very high level Lingít. So we are using this as a learning tool. And the way that we're approaching it is to try and see what we can translate. That doesn't mean I expect you to come out with full-on sentences. Like sometimes you're gonna look at it and be like, okay, I found these 3 words, but these other 7, I just don't know. But that's why we're gonna do this together. So like, what we'll do is I'll say, okay, go do 5 more sentences, right? That's probably what we're gonna do at the end of class. And that means you just can go give it your best. But I won't look at it and be like, oh, 3 out of 4 is a 75%. Like I really don't believe in that kind of stuff. I don't grade very much at all because I don't like grading because I don't think grading is conducive to learning. I think when you put grading on top of learning, I think you just create pressure, and I don't think there's a lot of things I think that come from value systems that I think aren't going to help us right now. And some of those are the concept of suffering. Like I was talking to someone who never finished their PhD program. And they said their advisor said, well, you know what? When I got my PhD, I worked so hard that I had a mental breakdown. And I was in the hospital for 10 days. If you're not willing to do that, I don't think you should have a PhD. And I think that's a load of trash. I think you should take that kind of thought and put it into the garbage. Because I think there's this concept that there must be suffering for you to go up a level, right? And I really don't adhere to that. I don't think that that's a useful thing at all. Maybe that works for some people, right? But we're not here to beat ourselves up, and we're not here to suffer. We're here to like look at stuff and be curious, learn how to use all these resources, give it our best guess, and then work through it together.
An advisor said that? It's insane.
And so if you have an advisor like that, get a new advisor.
Yeah.
I got a PhD in Hawaii. They never expected us to suffer.
I think I got the fourth one. Of not totally right. Because,
Fourth sentence?
yeah, it says this girl Sahan very kind and bony.
That is close. Yes, that is very close. So we've gotten up to this point. So x'úx'u is bone is the verb root. But when you say x'áandéin, that means this food is bony, like this fish has a lot of bones in it. But when you say x'úx'u, people will say, oh yeah, that's a hard-working person. They're ambitious.
Like working to the bone.
Yeah, which is, So there are some hints in the language, and I'm expecting you to come here just skin and bones because you've been translating 5 sentences for 70 hours over the last 4 days, right? So even though the language does suggest some things to us at times, we're like, maybe we'll just accept it as a metaphor. Yes. Okay.
So
Okay.
it says you're screen sharing, but we just see it that it says you're screen sharing.
Oh, what am I doing? Oh, it says it's paused. Why did it pause?
What the heck?
Sheesh. Can you see it now?
Click.
What does this
I
mean?
think I got that one wrong too. The third one, I said this girl Sahan, what was her name? She has a fractured bone.
Okay.
I think that's correct.
This is a new one. Okay. Let's see.
And the stick.
Let me try and share something else. Let's see if I'm getting the same result.
Let's see.
Is anyone else seeing this?
See what?
Wait, we'll answer the questions.
Click.
Like,
What did I see?
Is it still paused?
Yes, okay. I'm trying to figure it out on my end because it says your screen sharing is paused and there's a resume share button, which I'm pressing over and over. It's not doing anything. Okay.
Might have to go old fashioned and do the whiteboard.
Huh. Why would it be? Oh, hold on.
There's something weird, Xander.
Yeah, I'm not something.
That's up.
Whenever I come back from clicking or I've been spending a long time speaking it, after I've come back home or just start speaking English, I like start.
I am sorry, dude. Okay, hold on. Let me pause and
Okay, wait.